Commander Vera Knox adjusted her crimson battle armor and tried to look appropriately menacing as she watched the primitive human vessel drift helplessly in her tractor beam. After conquering 47 star systems, this should have been routine. Another backwater species, another quick subjugation, another feather in her already impressive cap. The Zephyrians hadn't built the galaxy's most feared military by being subtle. When they encountered new species, the protocol was simple: overwhelm, intimidate, conquer. Their telepathic abilities made resistance futile. Most species surrendered after the first mind probe demonstrated exactly how outmatched they were. Bringing the primitive aboard now, Commander Lieutenant Crix announced, his voice carrying that familiar mix of excitement and bloodlust that came with easy victories. Vera nodded, her head tentacles rippling with satisfaction. Earth's first interstellar vessel. How quaint. According to their scouts, humans had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. They were probably still figuring out which end of a plasma rifle was dangerous. The airlock hissed open, and in walked the most underwhelming specimen Vera had ever seen. Average height, average build, wearing what looked like a glorified jumpsuit. No visible weapons, no armor, no cybernetic enhancements. Just a guy with messy brown hair and an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Captain Jake Morrison. Earth Diplomatic Corps, he said, extending his hand in some bizarre ritual. Nice ship you've got here. Very stabby. Vera stared at the offered appendage like it might explode. You will address me as Commander Knox, human. You are now a prisoner of the Zephyrian Empire. Jake glanced around the weapon-lined corridor, noting the dozen armed guards pointing various unpleasant devices at him. Prisoner? Huh. And here I thought this was the welcome wagon. My mistake. My mistake. Your mistake, Vera said slowly, was leaving your pathetic little planet. Your species will make adequate servants once we've broken your spirit. Well, that's ambitious. Jake scratched his head. You might want to reconsider, though. We're not really the servant type. More like the burn everything down and start over type. Vera's laugh was sharp and predatory. Threatening me? How delightfully naive. Do you have any idea what the Zephyrian military has accomplished? We've brought entire civilizations to their knees. Good for you, Jake replied cheerfully. We've brought ourselves to our knees pretty regularly, sometimes twice on Sundays. Really builds character. The complete lack of fear in the human's voice was starting to irritate Vera. Where was the trembling? The begging? The desperate attempts at negotiation? This Jake Morrison was treating her conquest fleet like a minor inconvenience. Perhaps you don't understand your situation, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. We are telepathic warriors. We can read your thoughts, your fears, your deepest secrets. We know your weaknesses before you do. Telepathic? Jake's eyebrows rose. That's neat. Can you read the part where I'm thinking about how your armor makes you look like an angry Christmas ornament? Several guards shifted uncomfortably. In 47 conquests, no one had ever compared their commander to holiday decorations. Vera's head tentacles twitched with suppressed rage. You will learn respect, human. We have perfected the art of breaking stubborn species. Breaking things is definitely an art form, Jake agreed. We're pretty good at it ourselves. Though to be fair, we usually break our own stuff first. Practice makes perfect. Enough. Vera snapped. Guards, escort this thing to the interrogation chamber. It's time this primitive learned exactly what happens to species that displease the Zephyrian Empire. As the guards surrounded him, Jake just shrugged. Interrogation chamber? Sounds cozy. Do you guys have snacks? I skipped lunch. The interrogation chamber was designed to intimidate. Harsh lighting, uncomfortable metal chairs, and walls lined with instruments that looked like they belonged in a medieval torture museum. Vera had found that most species broke down just from sitting in the room for a few minutes. Jake, however, was examining the various devices with what appeared to be professional interest. Is that a neural disruptor? He asked, pointing to a particularly nasty-looking contraption. We've got something similar back home, but ours is more explodey. Sit down, Vera commanded, taking her place across from him. The interrogation table was made of black metal and inscribed with intimidating symbols that roughly translated to abandon hope, all ye who sit here. Thanks, Jake said, settling into the chair like he was at a coffee shop. So this is nice. Very atmospheric. Really captures that whole galactic overlord vibe you're going for. Lieutenant Crix entered, carrying a data pad and looking distinctly uncomfortable. Commander, the preliminary scans of the human vessel are complete. And? Vera asked, not taking her eyes off Jake. Well, there are some anomalies in the data. Anomalies? Crix shifted nervously. According to their historical records, humans have been involved in approximately 12,000 recorded conflicts in the last 4,000 years. That's 3 wars per year on average. Vera finally looked at her lieutenant. That's obviously a translation error. No species fights that much and survives. I thought so too, ma'am, but I ran the numbers 17 times. Their planet has a population of over 7 billion, and they've somehow managed to fight wars on 6 continents simultaneously while also developing interstellar travel. Statistical errors, Vera waved dismissively. Primitive record-keeping. Jake cleared his throat. Actually, those numbers are probably low. We don't really count the small stuff. You know, civil wars, rebellions, the occasional apocalypse. Tuesday nights can get pretty rough. You're exaggerating, Vera said firmly. Am I? Let's see, we've had 2 world wars, hundreds of smaller ones, several genocides, a few plagues, multiple attempts at nuclear self-destruction, and at least 3 different times we almost ended civilization by accident. Oh, and we invented professional wrestling, which is basically warfare as entertainment. Crix's tentacles had gone pale. Commander, what if the records are accurate? They're not, Vera snapped. No species could possibly be that violent and still achieve space travel. They'd have destroyed themselves millennia ago. You'd think so, Jake agreed. But here's the thing about humans, we're really, really good at not dying. It's like our specialty. We're the galaxy's ultimate survivors, and we got that way by practicing on each other. Nonsense. If humans were truly as violent as you claim, your planet would be uninhabitable. Jake laughed. Oh, we're working on that too. Climate change, nuclear waste, plastic pollution. We're very thorough when we put our minds to something. Vera was beginning to feel the first stirrings of unease. The human's casual attitude toward what should have been species-ending disasters was deeply unsettling. You're trying to frighten me with tall tales, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Frighten you? Commander, I'm trying to warn you. See, the thing about humans is we don't really do the whole peaceful submission thing. We're more of a fight everything that moves and some things that don't species. Every species thinks they're warriors until they meet real warriors, Vera replied, but she was remembering Crix's numbers. 12,000 conflicts in 4,000 years. That was insane. Fair point, Jake conceded. But here's the difference. Most species fight to survive. We fight because it's Thursday. Crix dropped his datapad. Vera stared at the human across the interrogation table, her confidence wavering for the first time in decades. Jake Morrison sat there with that same maddeningly casual expression, as if being interrogated by a galactic conquest fleet was just another item on his to-do list. You know what, she said finally, I think it's time we settled this once and for all. She stood and retrieved a small, crystalline device from the wall. The bioscanner hummed to life, its surface glowing with an ominous blue light. This is a Zephyrian memory probe, she explained, holding up the device. 1 drop of your blood, and I'll have access to your entire genetic history. Your species' memories, your capabilities, your true nature. No more stories, no more lies. Jake eyed the device with interest. Genetic memories? That's pretty advanced. We're still working on that technology. Though to be fair, we got distracted by figuring out how to make weapons out of everything. 1 sample, Vera continued, and I'll know if you're the primitive species my scans suggest, or if there's something more to your kind. And if there's something more, then we'll deal with it accordingly. Jake was quiet for a moment, and for the first time since arriving, his expression grew serious. Commander, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. What? What? Are you absolutely sure you want to know what's in there? He nodded toward the bioscanner. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And trust me, we've got some baggage. Vera's head tentacles twitched with irritation. More threats? I've conquered 47 star systems, human. I've seen everything the galaxy has to offer. Have you seen a species that spent 4,000 years perfecting the art of killing itself and somehow got better at it every generation? Stop trying to frighten me. I'm not trying to frighten you, Jake said quietly. I'm trying to prepare you. See, the thing about human genetic memory is that it's really, really comprehensive. We remember everything. Every war, every battle, every time we stared extinction in the face and decided to throw rocks at it instead of running away. Lieutenant Crix, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. Commander, perhaps we should reconsider. The preliminary data suggests. The preliminary data is wrong, Vera cut him off. No species could possibly be as violent as these records suggest. It's scientifically impossible. She activated the bioscanner and held out her hand. Give me your blood, human. Jake rolled up his sleeve with a resigned sigh. You sure about that, pointy ears? We've got some baggage. I'm sure. The scanner pricked Jake's finger, drawing a single drop of blood. The moment it touched the device's surface, the crystalline structure began to glow brighter. Vera placed her hand on the scanner's interface, and her telepathic abilities meshed with the device's memory reading capabilities. The first image hit her like a physical blow. Ancient humans, barely more than upright apes, using sharpened sticks to hunt creatures 10 times their size. Not running from predators, but hunting them. Turning every environmental challenge into a competition. Making weapons out of rocks, bones, and eventually metal. Oh, Vera whispered, her voice already shaking. That's just the warm-up, Jake said gently. We haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. The images accelerated. Humans discovering fire and immediately using it as a weapon. Humans developing agriculture and immediately fighting wars over farmland. Humans inventing the wheel and immediately using it to build war chariots. This isn't possible, Vera breathed, but she couldn't disconnect from the scanner. The genetic memories were flowing too fast, too intense. Bronze Age warfare. Iron Age massacres. Medieval battles where humans fought with swords and shields and somehow made it look like an art form. The Crusades. The Mongol conquests. The 100 Years' War. We're just getting started, Jake said, his voice distant. Wait until you see what we did when we got really creative. The Renaissance. Humans creating beautiful art and literature while simultaneously perfecting the science of warfare. Gunpowder. Cannons. Naval battles that spanned oceans. And then the modern era hit. World War I. Industrialized death on a scale that should have ended civilization. Trenches filled with bodies. Chemical weapons. Mechanized slaughter that lasted 4 years and killed millions. Vera's entire body was shaking now. How did you survive this? We got better at it, Jake replied simply. World War II. Nuclear weapons. The Holocaust. Stalingrad. D-Day. Hiroshima. Humanity's greatest generation fighting humanity's greatest evil, and somehow both sides were human. Stop, Vera whispered. Please stop. But the memories kept coming. Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq. Conflicts that spanned decades fought with weapons that could level mountains. And through it all, humans kept breeding, kept building, kept pushing forward. This is what we are, Jake said softly. This is what you wanted to conquer. The genetic memories weren't done with Commander Vera Knox. If anything, they were just getting started. She witnessed humanity's response to every natural disaster, every extinction event, every cosmic middle finger the universe had thrown at them. Volcanic eruptions that should have ended their species? Humans adapted. Ice ages that froze most of the planet? Humans migrated and innovated. Plagues that killed half their population? Humans developed medicine and kept fighting. By the void, Vera gasped, her consciousness reeling from the onslaught of images. You fight everything. Predators, weather, disease, each other, the planet itself. Yeah, we're not really big on the whole peaceful coexistence thing, Jake confirmed. We tried it once. It was a Tuesday. We got bored by Wednesday. The memories shifted to show humanity's technological development, and Vera realized with growing horror that every single advancement had been weaponized within generations, sometimes within months. Nuclear fission? Nuclear bombs. The internet? Cyber warfare. Space travel? Orbital bombardment platforms. Even their entertainment was violent. They had entire industries devoted to simulated combat. Your species created professional sports, she said, her voice hollow with disbelief. You turned warfare into entertainment. We also turned entertainment into warfare, Jake pointed out. Ever hear of competitive gaming? We can make anything into a battle. Cooking shows, dance competitions, flower arranging. If there's a way to compete, we'll find it. But the worst part, the part that made Vera's blood turn to ice, was the pattern she was seeing. Humanity didn't just fight to survive. They fought to improve. Every war made them stronger, more adaptable, more creative. They learned from every conflict, incorporated every lesson, and came back harder the next time. You're predators, she whispered. You're apex predators disguised as a diplomatic species. Oh, we're diplomatic, Jake said with a grin. We just have a very inclusive definition of diplomacy. Sometimes it involves treaties. Sometimes it involves explosions. We're flexible. The memories showed her humanity's expansion into space, and Vera's remaining hope crumbled. They weren't exploring the cosmos for knowledge or resources. They were expanding because it was what they did. Because staying still meant stagnation, and stagnation meant death. You're going to conquer the galaxy, she said, the words coming out like a death sentence. Conquer? Nah, that's too much paperwork. We're more likely to accidentally take over while trying to help. It's our specialty. The bioscanner was showing her human conflicts she'd never even heard of. Corporate wars fought with private armies. Proxy conflicts that spanned continents. Wars fought for resources, for ideology, for territory, for revenge, and sometimes just for the sheer bloody-minded satisfaction of proving a point. Your species has been at war for 4,000 years, Vera said, her voice breaking, continuously, without pause. Well, technically there was that one time in the 1960s when we almost achieved world peace, Jake corrected. But then somebody invented the AK-47, and we got back to business. The images kept coming. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric conflict, urban combat. Humans had developed tactics for fighting in every possible environment, underwater, underground, in the air, in space, in cyberspace, in dimensions that didn't technically exist yet. You don't just fight wars, Vera realized. You evolve through them. Every conflict makes you more dangerous. Evolution in action, Jake agreed. We call it learning from experience. It's very popular back home. The final sequence of memories nearly broke Vera's mind. It showed humanity's response to the discovery of alien life. Not wonder, not fear, but immediate tactical analysis. Within hours of first contact, human military strategists were developing contingency plans for every possible scenario. You knew we were coming, she said, her voice barely audible. We've been preparing for this conversation for about 60 years, Jake confirmed. Ever since we figured out that faster-than-light travel was possible. We kinda assumed we weren't alone, and we definitely assumed that whoever we met might not be friendly. And your response was? Same as always. Figure out how to fight them if we have to, but hope we don't have to. Vera finally managed to disconnect from the bioscanner, her hand shaking as she pulled away from the device. She stared at Jake Morrison with new eyes, seeing not a primitive diplomat but a representative of the galaxy's most successful predator species. "You're not explorers," she said quietly. "You're an invasion force." "We're explorers who happen to be really good at invasions," Jake corrected. "There's a difference. We're hoping for the best, but we're prepared for the worst." "And the worst is?" Jake's smile was sharp as a blade. "Commander, you really don't want to find out what the worst is. Trust me on this one." The warning klaxon that echoed through the Zephyrian flagship made Vera's blood freeze. More ships were approaching, and according to the scanner readings, they were human. "Multiple contacts," Lieutenant Crix reported, his voice shaking. 12 vessels, various configurations. They're not responding to our hails." "Military vessels?" Vera asked, though she already knew the answer would be worse than that. "Negative, Commander. They appear to be civilian ships, colony vessels, research ships, and what looks like a massive cargo hauler." Jake perked up in his chair. "Oh, that'll be the follow-up expedition. Right on schedule." "Follow-up expedition?" Vera's head tentacles were twitching with barely controlled panic. "Yeah, we figured if first contact went well, we'd want to get the colonists and scientists out here pretty quick. And if it went badly, well, they'd make good witnesses." "Witnesses to what?" "To whatever terrible thing you were planning to do to me. Humans are really big on documentation. We like to remember our grievances." Vera's mind raced. According to the genetic memories she'd just experienced, humans had a very long memory for injustices. They'd fought wars over centuries-old slights. They'd pursued vendettas across generations. And now there were 12 ships full of them approaching her fleet. Sir Crix continued. "The human vessels are requesting permission to dock. They're claiming this is a peaceful scientific expedition." "Peaceful?" Vera laughed hysterically. "Did you see what I just saw? These people don't do peaceful." "Actually, we do peaceful really well," Jake interjected. "We've had several peaceful decades. Granted, we were building up our military the whole time, but the intent was there." "Commander," Crix said urgently, "what are your orders?" Vera stared at the tactical display, watching the human ships approach in what appeared to be a standard diplomatic formation. But after experiencing their genetic memories, she could see the tactical implications. They weren't just approaching, they were surrounding her fleet. Not aggressively, but with the kind of casual competence that suggested they'd done this before. "How many people are on those ships?" she asked. "Approximately 4,000, Crix replied. "Mostly scientists, engineers, and colonists. No apparent military personnel." "No apparent military personnel," Vera repeated. "But they're all human." "Yeah, about that," Jake said casually. "You might want to know that on Earth we don't really have a sharp distinction between military and civilian. We have this thing called the militia system. Basically, every citizen is a potential soldier." 4,000 potential soldiers, Vera whispered. "Well, technically more than that. The colonists brought their families, kids too. And let me tell you, human children are terrifying. They'll fight over anything, and they never know when to quit." Vera's communication system crackled to life. "Zephyrian vessel, this is Captain Rodriguez aboard the U.S. Magellan. We're requesting permission to dock and begin formal diplomatic proceedings." "Diplomatic proceedings," Vera said faintly. "Yeah, we're big on diplomacy," Jake explained. "We've got treaties, accords, conventions, protocols. We've got diplomacy for war, diplomacy for peace, diplomacy for the weird gray areas in between. We've even got diplomacy for how to conduct diplomacy." Sir Crix said, "Admiral Thex is on the comm. He's requesting a status report." Vera looked at the communication panel, then at Jake, then at the tactical display, showing human ships peacefully surrounding her fleet. She thought about the genetic memories still burning in her mind, about a species that had turned warfare into an art form and somehow made it look like exploration. "Tell the Admiral," she said slowly, "that the situation is complicated." "Complicated how, my am?" The humans aren't what we expected. Jake chuckled. We get that a lot. People expect us to be either helpless primitives or raging barbarians. They never expect us to be competent. Competent, Vera repeated. You call 12,000 wars and 4,000 years competent? Well, we're still here, aren't we? I'd say that's pretty competent. Commander, Crick said desperately. Admiral Thex is demanding immediate compliance with standard conquest protocols. Standard conquest protocols, Vera said, her voice hollow, against a species that's been perfecting the art of warfare since before they invented writing. Oh, we had warfare before writing, Jake corrected. We just got better at documenting it once we figured out how to make marks on stuff. Vera looked at the tactical display one more time. 12 human ships, 4,000 humans, and one very amused human diplomat who'd just shown her exactly what his species was capable of. Cricks, she said finally, signal the fleet to stand down. Stand down? Ma'am, Admiral Thex will have your head tentacles for this. Lieutenant, Vera said quietly, after what I've just seen, I'm more worried about what the humans will do if we don't stand down. They're just explorers, Commander. No, Vera said, watching Jake's satisfied smile. They're explorers who happen to be the most successful predator species in the galaxy. And they've just decided to explore our section of space. 6 months later, Vera Knox sat in what used to be the most feared war room in the galaxy, watching Jake Morrison explain to a panel of terrified alien admirals why humans had accidentally ended 3 separate conflicts, established 4 new trade routes, and somehow convinced 2 warring species to sign a peace treaty by challenging them to a drinking contest. So you see, Jake was saying, gesturing at a holographic display, the Regelian vegan conflict was really just a misunderstanding about mining rights. A few rounds of poker, some creative contract renegotiation, and boom, peaceful resolution. You gambled away star systems, Admiral Thex said, his voice hollow with disbelief. We gambled for star systems, Jake corrected. There's a difference. And everybody won, technically. The Regelians got their mining rights, the vegans got exclusive shipping contracts, and we got a really good barbecue recipe. Vera rubbed her temples, feeling the familiar headache that came with trying to explain human logic to traditional military minds. The point is, Admiral, that human diplomatic methods are effective. Effective? Thex's tentacles were practically vibrating with rage. They've turned the entire galactic political structure upside down. Well, it needed turning, Jake said cheerfully. Your old system was basically biggest stick wins. We just introduced some variety. You introduced chaos. We introduced options. There's a difference. In the months since first contact, humans had spread through the galaxy like a benevolent plague. They'd established colonies, opened trade routes, started cultural exchanges, and somehow made friends with species that had been at war for centuries. They'd also, almost as an afterthought, revolutionized galactic warfare by making it obsolete. Explain to me again, Admiral Thex said wearily, how your species ended the Proxima Centauri siege by teaching both sides to play baseball. It wasn't just baseball, Jake protested. It was competitive baseball. There's a difference. See, both sides were fighting over resource rights, but they were also really bored. Turns out, when you give people something interesting to do, they stop looking for excuses to shoot each other. And now they have a 40-team league, Vera added, still amazed by the absurdity of it all. With playoffs, Jake said proudly. And a championship trophy made from the asteroid they were originally fighting over. This is insane, Thex muttered. This is human, Vera corrected. I've learned there's a difference. The communication panel chimed, and Captain Rodriguez's voice filled the room. Jake, we've got a situation developing in the Andromeda sector. 2 species threatening to go to war over a trade dispute. Admiral Voss is requesting human mediation. What kind of trade dispute? Jake asked. Something about spice routes and ancient territorial claims. Ooh, that's a classic. Tell the Admiral we'll be there in 3 days. and see if you can get the local cuisine guild involved. Nothing settles a trade dispute like a good cook-off. Thex looked at Vera in desperation. How do we stop this? Stop what? Vera asked. This madness. They're taking over the galaxy. No, they're not, Vera said quietly. They're fixing it. There's a difference. Commander Knox, Jake said, turning to her with that same casual smile that had haunted her nightmares for months. Want to come along? I could use someone who understands traditional military thinking. Someone to translate your insanity into something resembling strategy? Exactly. Vera looked at Admiral Thex, then at Jake, then at the galactic map that now showed human settlements scattered across 36 star systems. In 6 months, they'd done what the Zephyrian Empire had failed to do in centuries. They'd brought peace to large sections of the galaxy. Why not? She said finally. Somebody needs to keep an eye on you people. Great. We'll pick you up at 080800. And don't worry about weapons. We're bringing negotiators. Negotiators? Yeah, a couple of retired generals, a professional gambler, and a chef who makes this amazing sauce that's so good it should probably be illegal. That's your negotiation team? That's our secret weapon. You can't stay mad at someone who's feeding you really good food. As they prepared to leave, Vera reflected on the absurdity of her situation. 6 months ago, she'd been a feared military commander leading the conquest of primitive species. Now she was a diplomatic advisor to a species that had accidentally conquered the galaxy by being aggressively helpful. Jake, she said as they walked toward the docking bay, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you people ever going to stop surprising us? Jake grinned. Commander, we're human. Surprising people is what we do. It's like breathing, but more explosive. That's what I was afraid of. Don't worry, Jake said, clapping her on the shoulder. You'll get used to it. Everybody does eventually. And if we don't, then you'll join the support group. The Regellians started it after we convinced them to try democratic elections. They meet every Tuesday. There's coffee and therapy. Vera looked at him for a long moment, then started laughing. It was either that or start screaming, and she'd learned that when dealing with humans, laughter was generally the safer option. You know what the really scary part is? She said as they boarded the shuttle. What's that? I think you people are actually making the galaxy a better place. Well, Jake said, settling into his seat, we're certainly making it more interesting. As their shuttle departed for the Andromeda sector, where they would undoubtedly solve another impossible conflict through some combination of creative thinking, friendly competition, and really good food, Vera reflected on the lesson she'd learned about humanity. They weren't conquerors. They weren't explorers. They weren't even diplomats, despite their success at it. They were humans. And in a galaxy full of species that had forgotten how to adapt, how to grow, how to change, humanity was exactly what everyone needed. Even if nobody had realized it yet.